Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to a special edition of the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This special episode, I'm joined by my friend, my colleague, Jen Cooper, a soccer savant and a women's soccer researcher and writer and analyst extraordinaire. Incredible background, as I said, when it comes to soccer in general, and in particular when it comes to women's soccer. I have worked with her over the years. We have worked with her when it comes to World Cups. She does a tremendous amount of work also when it comes to the NWSL. And let's be honest, she's been around a long time, as we all have. When we talk about this type of subject, I wanted to get somebody who has context, that has history, that has an understanding of the topic that we are going to talk about today. Jen, can you hear me? How are you?
I can hear you. I'm feeling pretty good, other than the past few days have been kind of mind-numbing. But when you're talking about history and context, I'm going to say it's not really a surprise that something's finally come to a head.
This is a big story when we're talking about, and not just women's soccer and not just the NWSL, but soccer. And for those that have had their head in the sand over the last week, it was, as Jen mentioned, a crazy week for the NWSL in terms of the things. And I'm going to try to give you a little Cliff Notes version here, and Jen, if I stray off or if I'm wrong here, you will get your chance to correct me, as many people do. All right, here we go. All right, so Meg Lenahan and Katie Strang, two wonderful writers in The Athletic, did an incredible piece and a long form and a long-term type of investigative journalism. It came out, and it was this bombshell within the soccer community and outside of the soccer community. In that piece, they described and articulated a situation regarding Paul Riley, the former coach of the Portland Thorns and NC Courage and Western New York Flash, and being accused of sexual coercing players into having sex with him, forcing players into sexual situations, sending unsolicited sexual pictures, yelling at players, belittling players. It goes on and on. And two of the main characters in this story are Portland Thorn players accusing Riley of this, Sinead Farrelly and Mana Shim. This is in the context of a whole lot of other stuff that has gone on when it comes to women's soccer. The story with Deloy Hansen, the former owner of the Utah Royals, accused of racist and sexist actions. Craig Harrington, the former Utah Royals coach, administrative leave after being accused of sexual comments to staff. Richie Burke, the Washington Spirit coach, fired for alleged sexist and racist verbal abuse to players. Let's see, Alyssa LaHue, the Gotham City GM, who was released after an anti-harassment investigation. Christy Holly, the Racing Louisville coach, fired for cause. Lisa Baird, who was the NWSL commissioner, she has resigned since all of this has come out over the last week, resigned her position as commissioner and resigned her position on the United States Soccer Federation board of directors. And so that's some of the stuff that was included in this very, very long piece. How bad is it?
This is going to sound strange, but it's pretty bad. But I also feel like this is a new beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Like maybe this isn't quite burn it all down, but this is a phoenix can rise from these ashes. When I mentioned earlier that, I wasn't surprised that some of this stuff has come out. Some of these stories, we've heard bits and pieces of over the years, right? But if no one's going to come on record and talk about it, mm-hmm. Can't really do anything about it. The amazing thing here is Mana Shim and Sinead Farrelly stepping up to really, bring it out. And secondary to that, I have to applaud Alex Morgan for using her platform to then show, hey, Lisa Baird, you can't say you were shocked and disgusted to hear this because you actually heard this before. Right. So I feel like it's like finally the ball got moving, and it just kept on moving and kept on moving. Where we've only seen bits and pieces of this. So it's bad, Alexi. It's pretty bad, but I don't think it's a death knell for the league the way it would have been for WSA or WPS.
Okay. I mean, so you mentioned a couple of the changes that are already happening, and even this is happening in real time. As I was driving in here just a little while ago, Merritt Paulson, the owner of both the Portland Thorns and the Portland Timbers, and the Portland Thorns released a statement where, they accepted responsibility. They kind of clarified how they had gone about what they thought was appropriate, but certainly, didn't excuse their behavior and, vowed going forward to do things. When it comes to how bad this is and whether this is a situation where you have to start again. For example, Megan Rapinoe, when this all broke, came out and said, let it burn. So is there an element of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here? Because I have to assume that while this is looking like it's systemic and looking like it's prevalent in a lot of different situations here, there's probably also a lot of NWSL players who enjoy playing in NWSL. It's not that they won't want to make more money, but have good experiences, want to continue to play in this league. And this is why you're so important, because you give context. And we have, unfortunately, a history that is littered with leagues and defunct leagues and teams. And you have this league now that has, lasted over the last decade, and yes, to a certain extent has been very, very successful. Do you think that this is a situation where it can be fixed, or is this a situation where you start again and then go forward?
I definitely believe it can be fixed. I think the danger of saying something like burn it all down, because of course it's such a handy phrase these days, is the bulk of the players in NWSL don't have anywhere else to go play. Any player in the national team does, but the bulk of these players don't. Most of them could find some gig over in Europe, but it's not going to be as high paying as they're getting here. They're not going to be with friends and family. It's going to be a very different kind of situation. I know we all believe that there is more money to be made in Europe. That's only for your very, very top players, right? Your national team players. We know, there's work permits that you have to get to go play in Europe, and they usually require that you've played a certain number of games with your national team, right? So for the bulk of these players, it's not even, Alexi, whether they like the league, enjoy the league, have good experiences. If they want to play professional soccer as Americans, this is their option. They can't go play in Liga MX Femenil. They're not going to go play in the Australia League anymore, which is much weaker than it used to be and has a very limited season. They need this league. The good thing is we've seen this league go through so many changes already in less than 10 years in terms of who the owners are, who's running the league. It's going through some horrible growing pains, and they're obviously very necessary growing pains. But I think something really good can come out of it. I think the players are in such a great position right now in a way I don't think they ever have been to dictate what this league needs to be. And you can sure say, burn it down, let's start over. That doesn't mean it's going to be better.
Okay, so when you talk about what it needs to be or what it should be, and I'm not talking about burning it down, I'm talking about taking the good that you have and building on that and getting rid of, obviously, the bad that you have. What does that ultimately look like? And I want to read you a quote here from Meg Lanahan, who did write the piece. And, obviously, as I said, this was bigger than sports. This was mainstream. And, the unfortunate reality for the NWSL is, let's be honest, the times where it has broken through the mainstream are, I would think the kneeling situation and then this situation. So it's never, unfortunately, about soccer, but just like all soccer leagues, especially in the United States, we're trying to get
or Sam Kerr coming out
yes.
in 2018 after she had left Sky Blue saying, hey, things were really bad.
Yes, but it's rarely about the actual kicking of the ball, and that's not just singular to NWSL. But Meg said this, and she was talking on NBC, I think, and she said women's sports traditionally have been built by men and are also trying to use the structures of men's sports, and I think we're now finally seeing that leads to problems in a major way. First off, do you agree with that? Second off, if you do agree with that, what structure are we looking at, and how does it differ maybe from how men's sports and men's leagues operate?
I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. I tend to be a little more reticent when it comes to, the solution is a woman, because some of my experiences have shown that that's not always true either. And let's not forget that Elise LaHue was the first of these many dominoes to fall, someone who was very prominent in Gotham, making such an amazing turnaround over the last 2 years. I do understand what Meg's saying in terms of, these structures, yeah, they have all been built by men, right? Because pro sports that's what it's always been.
Yep.
I think there's both an advantage and a disadvantage to using those structures. I think that's one of the biggest conflicts that NWSL has had from the beginning, in terms of you've had clubs that are partnered with MLS clubs and the ones that aren't. And there's clearly bonuses with that, but there's also the downside we see of sometimes the NWSL club just, it's the afterthought, right? It's just like, oh, great, someone else to use our venue so we can cover our venue costs, but they're not thinking about it in a, one club kind of mentality. I do think it's important that we get as many more women involved in the sport as possible at any level. I like what Angel City is trying to do. I like what San Diego's trying to do, though I really wish someone would tell Jill Ellis to stop saying she's only going to hire women, because that is actually illegal. Yeah. But I like what they're trying to do, and they're bringing women with incredible management experience into leadership positions. Right. And now with, the opening of Lisa Barrett's positions, and also the 3 women doing the executive committee, there's a lot of potential there, and maybe in all of this mess, someone can finally convince, Steve Washington Spirit to give the rest of his ownership to Michelle Kong. Right. Right. But yeah, I really don't want to say that the answer is, women should create a new structure. I don't think there's necessarily a new structure to be created, but I think women should have a lot more say in how things are being run. And more importantly, I think the most important thing about all of this is the players need a CBA. I know that you lived through it in the early years of MLS, of fighting for a CBA, right? And it's ridiculous in this far into NWSL that the non-national team players don't have a CBA, right? WSA, there was a CBA. WPS, there was a CBA for all players. Here, there's not. They've been negotiating one. You finally had the Players Association be recognized, come together late 2018. But it's a CBA is long overdue.
Is there a part of you that's, look, we're all disappointed and saddened to see this, and angry to see this type of stuff. But, someone like you that has been around and has seen all these different versions of women's professional soccer and these different leagues. And look, they're all unique, and they've all, gone their pathways and different pathways. And, this is the third one in a line of 3. And I know there's other smaller ones here or there, but the reality is three times. Have we learned our lessons from the past, or are we making some of the mistakes that we made in the past?
I'm going to say we mostly haven't. And part of that is because I think all of us think that, each league gets to build off the mistakes of the previous league. Well, each league doesn't necessarily talk to the people from the previous league, right? Yep. And then I also see within our current NWSL, there's a lot of people in the front office who maybe they've been there a couple of years, right? So they're not even tapping into the people who started it out in 2013, 2014, 2015, right? And that's one of the things that I've always found frustrating, is that, why aren't you tapping into those resources? Why aren't you talking to Melanie Fitzgerald, who's now with MLS, who was the director of ops for WPS? Why aren't you talking to Joe Cummings, who was general manager of the Boston Breakers in the WSA area, the one franchise that actually made a profit? Why aren't you talking to him, asking what he did right? Like I think that's the most frustrating thing, is that we're going to keep repeating mistakes until we acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with talking to the people that went before us.
There is, they say there's opportunity in crisis. And so how much of what has happened over the last week, and who knows what is maybe going to continue to happen here until this mess is cleaned up. How much damage has been done in that? Is this a step back in order to go 2 steps forward? I mean, look, there are success stories when it comes to women's soccer, and in particular when it comes to NWSL. Angel City, and the tournament just to get back last year in the pandemic, the call to action and the money that has been put in, and the support when it comes to corporate sponsorship and all that kind of stuff. So there are some good things. Does this damage that, or does this just set it back a little bit? And to your point, maybe you use it to go even greater guns going forward.
I think it only sets them back a bit based on, well, one, the timing, right? We're not right around a World Cup. The Olympics is over. This is actually the best time to be reinventing the wheel, shall we say, or rather, just slightly reinventing the wheel. You've got, the next World Cup is almost 2 years away. I hate to say it, but there's no such thing, to me, there's no such thing as bad press. And this is a hell of a lot of bad press in some people's minds, but the number of people who have reached out to me to say, oh, wow, I just heard this about the league. What do you think? Right? It's probably the kind of awareness that the league so rarely gets, and yeah, it's not the most positive coverage, but it's actually timely and relevant. And like you said, bigger than soccer. So maybe it engages some people of like, oh, I didn't know we had a league, or I didn't know that Megan Rapinoe played for the Reign in Tacoma, or I had no idea that our national teamers were in this league. What can I do to support this league? Like you said, there's opportunity in crisis. And I think that is an opportunity.
A lot of these accusations involve men. And men in coaching positions, and obviously in those positions, whether they're men or women, they have power, and a lot of this is about ultimately power and exercising that power over people that are less powerful. If you were in a position and you were talking to a coach of an NWSL team or a potential coach for an NWSL team, how would you be telling him or her how to act? I guess my question is, I've never been in that situation. I've never been a coach in that situation, and I certainly was not a player in that type of situation. Are there different ways of coaching when you are coaching professional women as opposed when you're coaching professional men?
I don't believe so. Of course, I haven't played any higher than rec level, but to be very honest, but it does remind me of having to deal with the co-ed league that I ran. Some of our referees would say, I want to call the games to protect the women, and I was like, look, if you call the game, you do protect the women. If you're making the calls, whoever committed the foul, you protect the women. We had a lot of referees. They would always call the foul on the guy if a guy and a girl went in for a ball because they wanted to protect the women. I'm like, no, now you're creating a culture where the women know they can get away with anything. Right. And that's not what I'm trying to say here, but it's like, hey, it's a workplace. You treat everybody with respect. You don't have personal relationships with players, period. And by personal relationships, I'm saying you don't say, hey, let's go meet over coffee. Hey, let's do something outside of the game. You kind of draw that line of, this is work and this is play, and the two don't cross over. Unfortunately, I think, for decades before this, soccer was such a small community that you did naturally have relationships grow out of it, and I'm not going to name names for that, but, and I know it's hard, especially when you consider that a lot of players in NWSL do end up dating each other, right? Because that's who you're spending all your time with, right? So that's the kind of thing that can blur some lines too. But I think it's pretty basic. It's not how you don't have to treat anybody special. You just have to treat people respectfully, right? Yep. Like, hey, especially when you as the person with power, I would think of it much like a professor and a grad student, right? Like, you have the power. You don't get to invite that student out for, something that could be construed as a date.
Yeah, don't be an ass. I mean, let's be
exactly.
Honest, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Don't be an ass. It's you can use that if you'd like on a t-shirt or hashtag it or anything like that. Words to live by for all of us. And
I was actually thinking of Show FC or
There you
FC
go.
show. I hadn't decided which one.
I'm more of an SC show. I mean, but that's my American soccerness coming. But if you want to be all authentic and genuine and Euro snobby and go FC show, that's fine. That's that. You can
at least I'm not going inter show.
That's true. Inter show United FC Sporting. All right. Well, let's end this on and look. I know we've only scratched the surface here, and there's so much more, and unfortunately, there's probably going to be more. The only, I guess, positive is, because of the courage of these players and because of the diligence when it comes to reporting this, if there are others that are in situations like this, maybe they will now have the opportunity and the courage also to come forward, and we can root it out and get it out and get back to the actual playing of the game and the building of the game, which, as you know full well, needs as much attention as possible. I mean, this game, whether it's men's or women's, and certainly when we're talking about the NWSL, as far as it has come, it's still very fragile. So on those lines, what's your vision for the future when it comes to women's professional soccer in the form of NWSL, which obviously you're close to? What does it ultimately look like on and off the field as we go forward? I know it's a pretty open-ended question, but I want you to kind of paint a vivid and hopefully a beautiful and much more positive picture for us out there as to what we can expect after a whole lot of hard work and certainly some soul searching when it comes to where we are right now.
Okay, so I'm thinking a 16-team league, 2 divisions of 8. Every team has at least 3 paid assistant coaches. So you've got a really natural path for these players that they're coming out of NWSL. We're going to start seeing a lot of retirement soon. That there's a natural path to coaching for them, right? Which will help that pipeline. We'll see more women coaches, right? Just the stuff we've seen this season before this show began, right? Of Casey Stoney announced his coach. Freya Coombe, who nobody knew her name 2 years ago, is now going to be head coach for Angel City FC, right? We know there's a lot of cities interested in having a franchise. So I'm thinking a nice 16-team expanded playoffs, a championship game that is sponsored and has some really cool name to it, right? The final has never been named, right? It's just the NWSL championship. An all-star game that's the best of NWSL against the current U.S. women's national team. As much as they might hate that, I think that would just be the most amazing thing to watch. More international players. And even if I'm always hesitant to say, we need to up the salaries by a lot, right? Because there's so much investment that needs to happen other than player salaries to make this the best league, right? I want to see all the investment in, okay, you have bigger staffs at all these clubs. So anytime something like the crap that's happening now is happening, there's people to handle it. It's not like, we don't have time to deal with that, or that's such a small issue, right? That you've got real marketing behind this. And my biggest fantasy, Alexi, I'll be honest, is U.S. soccer actually marketing the NWSL.
Nice. You mentioned the U.S. women's national team. I can't let you go because, obviously they are such a juggernaut and such a huge part of this whole conversation. Let's be honest, because of the oxygen that they take up, and rightfully so, because they are rock stars and they draw a tremendous amount of attention. And so there's always curiosity and talk about what this team is. You've seen this team over decades grow into this version of it right now. As we head into this next couple of years, getting ready for the next World Cup, and given what happened in the Olympics, and as you mentioned, players that are coming to the end of their career, give us a little taste when it comes to the women's national team as you see it out there, and what this is going to look like under Vlatko going forward. If it's under Vlatko, I don't know, maybe not, who knows? But as it goes forward into the next few years here.
Well, I feel like, Vlatko got the weirdest assignment as a U.S. women's head coach. He was already inheriting the best team in the world that had just won back-to-back women's World Cups, right? But then the pandemic hit, so he doesn't even get to go through the, okay, this is my first tournament. All of that gets delayed. So he gets an extra year in a way, but it's not like he gets an extra year to deepen the pool or test other players, right? So it was like everything was put on pause in March 2020 and then just brought back the next year. And I think that led to the strangest Olympics I think we have ever seen. So I'm really looking forward to the November camp for the U.S. women, because it'll be the first one where Alexi can call in whomever he wants, right? The September and October.
You mean Vlatko? Hold on. I'm not coaching it.
Sorry.
Good God. You said me.
Oh, you.
There's a lot of people out there that just, spat out their coffee or whatever right now. That's the last thing in the world that they want.
Okay.
All right?
Oh, sorry. I was talking my nightmare.
I was
talking my nightmare version. That was the nightmare version, everybody. That wasn't the dream version. That was the nightmare version. Right. So Vlatko calls in whoever he wants, because September, October, he has to call in the Olympians, and he can call in a few others if there's injuries. But once November hits, he can call in whoever he wants. And I cannot wait to see that, right? Because we do have a lot of players towards the end of their careers, right? It's too late to keep the band together. It's time to break up the band and take a new path. And our country is just too talented. The pool is too deep to think that there's only 20 people that can make it happen for the US.
Amen. All right, listen, we've gone all over the map. Is there anything else that you want to say about anything that we have talked about? As I said at the top, I enjoy talking to you about soccer, right? Whether it's women's soccer, men's soccer, co-ed, naked soccer, really doesn't matter to me, because I love the way that you think about the game. As you know, having been around a while, we are an interesting animal when it comes to who we are as American soccer people. We eat our own. We are insecure. We do things that make us scratch our heads, even when we're doing them ourselves. But it comes from a place of love and emotion and passion and all that kind of stuff. And we are constantly building and working and going forward. So when we have a week like this where things don't go well, and it is, to your point, to your point, such a shit show, I wanted to go to someone who could walk me through this. Is there anything that I have missed? As I said, I know we just scratched the surface, but anything that you want to say before we head out?
Just 2 quick points.
Sure.
One, and you've probably thought about this, is when you think of where the NWSL is compared to MLS at the same age, they were going through some pretty serious crises. And, I know a lot of women's soccer fans don't like to make comparisons to men's sports, but I think when there are so few role models for how leagues should work, right, that I think MLS at year 9, year 10 is a very good example, right? And there was a lot of crap going on, and I can remember year 10, 11 so well, because the Dynamo came to Houston, and it's so funny to look back and see what there were 10, 12 teams. It's so weird when you think of how big MLS is now, right? But they had to go through some really painful growing pains. Second, and this is much more specific to NWSL, without the anti-harassment policy that was written, set up, adopted, announced in early April of this year, none of this would have happened. And I say this, I say that in a great way, that it's I'm assuming it's the Deloy Hansen issue that forced all of this to happen in terms of the league writing that policy and adopting that policy. But whatever it was, thank God it happened, because it started the momentum that led to all of these pieces falling away. And, I hate to think of anybody's career being ruined, but at the same time, it sounds like all of these things are probably necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me anytime on Twitter at Keeper Notes or at Mix Zone. That's my own podcast, Mix Zone with 2 X's. And I post a lot of really dorky soccer stats, including Broso soccer stats at keepernotes.com.
She is absolutely a follower, and if you ever get a chance to sit down and to talk soccer, like I said, don't waste it, because you will come out of that conversation better for it, regardless of what kind of soccer you are talking about. Jen, thank you so much for coming on in short notice here and talking to us about, I know a very sensitive and sad type of situation and subject. I can only hope that you are right in that this is, while a step back, just a step back, and that this league will learn, this team will grow, this league will evolve. I want soccer to succeed, as you do, as we all do, in any form that is out there, whether it's on grass, whether it's on synthetic surface, whether it's on sand, whether it's on court, whether it's on asphalt. It really doesn't matter to me as long as people are kicking a ball. But in doing that, and as we grow, these things are going to happen. And how we react to that and the things that we do to make sure that these things don't happen again, that ultimately is what is going to create a solid foundation and is going to create successful league going forward. So we're not here in another 10 years talking about the fourth league in a succession.
Exactly. Amen to that.
There you go. There you go. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this special edition of the State of the Union podcast. We will have our normal edition coming out this week also, but you have found this in your feed. I hope you stayed with us. I hope you listened to this. I hope that the great Jen Cooper has made you smarter and given you a much greater understanding of the situation that, as I said, evolved over the last week, but also with a lot of other things when it comes to women's soccer and soccer in general. We'll see you again next time. And until then, and as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.